Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast for Wednesday, April the 30th. Zach Ewing here with Rod Walker, Matthew Paris, Jeff Duncan. Luke, I am your father. Johnson is not here today. That's a bad inside joke, but Luke's not with us today, but we are going to kind of, we have had a chance for a deep breath after the draft, after Derek Carr's sermon, and we can kind of reset where we're at with this Saints offseason, what we thought of the draft, and I think specifically, like, we got to start with the quarterback situation. That's what everyone wants to talk about, that, and that is the biggest question left for the Saints.
We don't start with Rod's shirt, who has the best shirt game on this podcast.
Yeah, it's all chain shirt.
I mean, I knew that he had the best shirt game, but
yeah, he definitely has the best shirt game. No, I mean, look, obviously that's the big story everyone's been talking about all offseason, and it just continues to get more confusing, I think, as we go along. And the fact that the first time we hear from Derek Carr is from a Las Vegas church pulpit, I think kind of speaks to how bizarre this whole story is. And I'm not sure we're ever going to get the real story, but I'm interested. I think everyone, not just in New Orleans, but across the league, is fascinated to see where this thing goes, because I don't think anybody really knows right now.
I feel like I should be playing like a nice mellow guitar or like a nice bass as you're talking to
some background music
for the church vibes, you know.
Well, you wouldn't at the Church of Christ, because when I used to go to the Church of Christ, they wouldn't allow music in the church. So
that doesn't sound like much of a church. Music, kind of music to have a church, right? No,
no electronic, at least electronic.
He's from Kentucky.
Okay. Gotta have an organ. Yeah. Okay.
It's actually Nashville, but close enough.
Look, I think, what you're getting at, Jeff, is that this is a pretty unprecedented situation. Like, but especially given the timing of it and the fact that we had not heard, Rod, a peep about a shoulder injury from December through April. And now here we are. The Saints have drafted a quarterback that we don't even know whether he's going to be in the running to start in the fall. Mickey Loomis has said Carr is still the starter if healthy. It is literally the last day of April. We're about to go into May and minicamp season and things like that, and we don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah. I do think Tyler Shough is in the running to be the starter in the fall. I think we can say that. I mean, even though I know,
given the injury status,
right. It's just a really strange situation, and the fact that nobody's really talking about it, I think that's the part that's the most baffling about it. Mickey Loomis was just kind of didn't talk about it, kind of kicked it down the road and said we'll talk about it later after the draft. And I think he was kind of asked about it after the draft, and he didn't really address it. But he did say that, you know, if healthy, Carr's going to be the starter. But he has a lot of unanswered questions. Matt did a good piece with the timeline of everything that's happened with Carr and it's like a mystery, and everybody's trying to solve it. Like, okay, when did this happen, and when did the Saints know? Just a lot of questions about it.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you mentioned that, because you can check that out, NOLA.com/Saints. Matt wrote a timeline. Jeff has a column to go with it. Just kind of trying to piece together who knew what when, what happened when, whether there was some sign of this. There really wasn't before, what was it, April 11th that we first heard of this injury. And like, it's just bizarre. And we're sitting here trying to piece it together because neither side has offered a whole lot of clarity on it.
Yeah, and when you don't speak publicly for months, this is what happens, is people fill the void of trying to figure out, you know, what happened, when did he hurt his shoulder? We still don't know these answers. Like, the biggest questions I have about the situation is, when did this start bothering him, and when did the Saints find out? Mm-hmm. Because when the Saints found out, I think is maybe the biggest key in all of this, is because how did it affect their offseason plans? Where they have, you know, cut him, tried to trade him, you know, where they've restructured his contract. Like, they made a number of moves here now that I think indicates maybe they didn't know, but I don't know that for absolute certainty. And does this have to do with his contract situation and him wanting out? I mean, that's the thing that it's hard to decipher, and it's hard for me to build sympathy, so to say, about an injury, is because there was all this stuff looming in the background.
Yeah, if you go back and listen to his his interview with us in the locker room the day after the season, he talked about a lot of things there that indicate, like we've talked about, he's a veteran in his mid-30s. He knows how the game works. He even said, my brother told me if they can cut Peyton Manning, they can cut you and cut anybody. So he talked about the possibility of getting cut. He talked about wanting to be there. He talked about restructuring his deal to work with the team. So all these things he knew were a possibility back after the season, and of course he did. He's been in the league a long time. He knows how the business works. So if there was some problem with how things were negotiated or handled with his status on the roster, it must have occurred between the end of the season leading up to, this April 11th injury situation. And he never mentioned, as Matt said, and the timeline indicates, there's never been a mention of a shoulder, ever. And if you watch the injury, it occurred when he went face first against the Giants. Almost all the blow goes to his left side where he hurt his wrist and his face. You don't see any treatment at all to his shoulder. The trainers are attending to him on the field. It's all with his wrist. So I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it adds to the bizarre nature of this.
Well, that's what doesn't make sense about the David Carr. For those unaware, David Carr, Derek's brother, went on NFL Network to shed some light about the injury, and he says Derek believes it happened against the Giants. If they really wanted to, it seems more like the 2023 injury where he hurt his AC sprain was to his throwing shoulder
Against the Packers
in Week 3, and so I don't understand why. I mean, maybe it did happen against the Giants, but it just seems like that's the more likely explanation. And Sports Illustrated reported that Derek Carr's camp had been telling people that it was that injury prior. I had heard that it was an old shoulder injury and that the two with the Giants game specifically wasn't related. And so, maybe they don't know the origin of the
I
injury.
wonder if
Maybe
David Carr got confused. Because what he said doesn't add up with anything else.
Well, he also said that Derek broke his wrist. And I don't know where the fracture in his hand was, but is wrist different than hand on an injury report?
I don't think so. I think they probably.
No, I mean, yeah. And that's the other thing is that the shoulder was never listed on any injury report. So either the Saints were falsifying the injury report, which I don't think they would do, or this injury occurred without anybody knowing it at the time. And the other thing is that this is kind of out of character for Carr. He's always been sort of this team first, I'm not going to put myself above the team. I will go out of my way to act humble. I don't know if he's actually humble, but he certainly tries to put on that front in interviews and always be upfront with everything. And this is clearly not that. So something is going on here, I think, behind the scenes that we still don't know about, whether that's just strained relations with the team itself, whether that's Carr seeing the writing on the wall and trying to do anything he can to get himself out of town. I don't know what it is, but there's something going on there.
I would say this. I talked to some people, some former NFL quarterbacks, about this story just to get a sense of, is it possible, would Carr's story add up that he didn't throw all offseason? And they said, actually, that's not totally implausible for you to go 2-3 months cold turkey after the season. They said a lot of quarterbacks won't. They want to keep that foundation. But he said some guys don't. But they said the one thing that doesn't add up is the fact that Carr was coming off of an injury. And they said that makes it extremely unlikely he would not have thrown because he would want to have progress checks on his health status, right? I mean, he's not coming off of a season where he was healthy. He was coming off where he was coming off an injury, so he would have to be undergoing. He even said in that interview after the season that he was going to have to go through some more clearances. Well, I would think maybe he doesn't have to throw for clearance, but he's a professional quarterback. He would have to be throwing, I think.
The only thing is the injury was to his non-throwing hand.
Right,
so
but
maybe
you still got to throw.
We're threading a very fine needle of believability.
To me, like I said in my column, it strains credulity to think he would not have tried to throw at some point.
Right.
I mean, that's just even if it is his left wrist, he's got it. He talked about, didn't they do?
They did a simulated game.
Right.
They first did a test prior to the Raiders game of trying to test out his hand, and he didn't have the functionality. The grip strength was the key word that Darren Rizzi kept using at the time.
But that would have been on his
Non-throwing hand, so you can't grip it as much. So, like, you still have to,
Right.
have the form. And then he said that there was supposed to be a second test. And then when he was ruled inactive, Rizzi did not say outright whether that second test happened or it went so poorly that they determined, hey, you're not close. And so they shut him down. But why that timeline includes all the other all the other hand injury stuff is because from the start of him getting hurt, there seemed to be a disconnect either between Carr's camp and the Saints or whoever leaked the injury to Rappaport of, all right, this guy's done. He's out for the season versus no, he can come back. He's trying really hard. Look at how much work he's putting into his rehab. And there was that disconnect. And for it happened over 4 weeks. It wasn't like we want to keep our opponent guessing. I don't know. It just, something was not right there, I don't think. And it continued into the offseason.
Here's my theory on all that.
Yeah.
And I think it adds up to exactly what you're talking about with when this injury news dropped in April. Same thing happened, right?
Yep.
All this information that comes out, and it's been reported by good reporters, Ian Rappaport, Tom Pelissero, they're NFL Network, they're their lead guys. I trust their reporting. More than likely that's coming, as we all know, through Carr's agents, I would assume. They want that out because, one, they're protecting their client. They're also showing their client is hurt. So it's in their best interest, I think, for him to get the injury information out. Not in the Saints' best interest. That's why the Saints were doing what they were doing back. They were trying to maintain this competitive edge ruse that he might play and make other teams, even though I think it's all wasted energy and effort, that's what I think their strategy was, to maintain that Carr might be on the field. Carr's agents don't care about that. They care about Carr.
They went 0-4 during that stretch, by the way.
Right. And then the same thing happens right before camp, right before the off-season program. The Saints were unaware, I think, that this information was coming out. And they may have known about the injury, but they weren't going to let anybody know. We don't know how long they knew, but it was in Carr's best interest for that to get out because he wasn't going to be at the off-season program, and that's their client, and they don't want to look bad. So I think it's clear this is what's going on. Carr's camp's acting one way, and the team isn't, and I'm sure the team isn't happy about it.
So I think this is probably a good way to kind of get into the draft because it's one of the only drafts you'll ever hear where the majority of the discussion is not on the first-round pick. Kelvin Banks was the Saints' first-round pick. Okay, fine. Everyone thinks that add to the offensive line, fine. Everybody is talking about the second-round pick, Tyler Shough, how it relates to the Carr thing. Rod, I kind of said during our live draft show Thursday night that my thought was if they took a quarterback at 40 or even traded up to take one higher than that it was a sign they were not confident in Derek Carr being able to go in 2025. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think going into the draft, I think we all kind of figured they'd get a quarterback at some point. Of course, I thought they would get one at 9, but everybody thought they would use one of those first 2 picks to get one, and that's what they ended up doing. And to me, that kind of tells you. That's why I say I think Shough will be the starter when the season starts. I just think that's where this team is, and maybe they miraculously get this worked out, but I just don't really see that happening. I think Tyler's going to be the guy.
What is the percentage chance Derek Carr starts in week 1? You guys have a number?
Say like 10.
I was just going to say less than 10.
Yeah.
This is Mickey Loomis hates speculation. Apologies to him.
I don't hate it though.
I don't think he would have come out and said, I expect there to be a quarterback competition if he knew Derek Carr had like a shot at playing.
He kind of slipped up there.
I think he revealed a little bit, maybe more than he was intending to, because when I asked him, hey, is there going to be a competition with Derek? He goes, oh, yeah, Derek's the starter if healthy. I tried to ask Kellen Moore that same question because he also said that there'd be a competition. He was a lot more, yeah, Derek's a great guy. Well, we'll see. Like, that was before Loomis talked on Saturday, and so Moore talked Friday, Loomis talked Saturday. But I don't really think they're expecting this to get better. I mean,
yeah, I think they think he's going to get operated on and be out for the year. That's just what I'm speculating on.
You in the same boat, Rod? 10% or less?
I might go even lower than 10%, but yeah, I don't think it looks good for Derek Carr.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if we ever even see him again.
It's starting to. If you had asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said it was still 25, 30%. That like, hey, he could still, maybe this thing gets better, and they're going to need him, and they want to win games, and he's their best path to doing that. But like, the longer this goes on without any answer. And that's the other thing is, Jeff, we can get into the Tyler Shough pick here. You had reported before the draft you were hearing he was the number 2 quarterback on their board behind only Cam Ward, who obviously went number 1 to the Titans. So one reason I wonder if Shough was that high on the board is because, you could argue Jackson Dart, but more so than Shedeur Sanders, more so than Jalen Milroe, he's pro-ready, right? He's 25 years old, which has been much discussed. There's been a lot of angst about his age, but it is true that he's more experienced than a lot of these guys in the draft. If you needed a guy to step in and immediately become the starter, he was probably on the safer side of pick.
Yeah, I think talking to people about him, he had fewer question marks about his ability to make the transition to the NFL, maybe even more than Cam Ward. But mainly it was because he's in a pro-style offense at Louisville. Jeff Brom runs almost the same concepts that most of these NFL teams run, whereas Jackson Dart at Ole Miss was playing in Lane Kiffin's system, which is very college-oriented. You're in the shotgun the entire time. Like, he never was under center, so he never turned his back to the – Now, a lot of coaches – I mean, I talked to Sean Payton about this. Sean said that didn't bother him at all. He said Bo Nix was in the same system at Oregon. He goes, good quarterbacks will make that transition. But he goes, you don't have to answer that question with Tyler Shough. Because you've seen him do it. He did everything that you're being asked for. So I think that's a big key. And the other thing is he played in, because he did transfer a lot, he played in a lot of different systems. And so his ability to pick up offenses, master them quickly, which is what he's going to have to do here, they found that as an advantage.
I feel like the age thing's a little overblown just when you look at how old Bo Nix was this time a year ago and Michael Penix. I mean, they were just a year younger than what Tyler is. So, I mean, I don't think that's really as big of a deal as people try to make it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think for a quarterback, it's not. Look, people say, oh, he's going to be in his 30s in 4 years. That's so old. If he's still playing for the Saints in 4 years, that means they extended his deal. That means this pick was it was a hit because you wouldn't extend him past that if it wasn't. So why are you worried about that? And at quarterback, we've seen countless examples of them being not only productive but star players into their 30s. Like it's very possible. I do think there's a small argument to be made for if you were an older player dominating against younger players in college, is that a sign? Can you do it when that playing field is leveled? But that to me is more of a concern when you're talking about the more physical positions, like on the line, where you, like Kelvin Banks, who we'll talk about in a minute, was a 20-year-old playing against 21 and 22-year-olds and holding his own. That's a good sign. I don't think that matters as much at a more, kind of cerebral position like quarterback.
Yeah, I would say the concern more with the Shough pick is he going to be durable? Is he going to hold up? Mm-hmm. Now, people have said that, hey, like at least these were broken bones. They weren't ligaments. He's not coming off anything super serious. I do wonder if, how are his bones going to hold up when he's getting hit?
Some people just have more brittle bones. That's just how they are. Yeah.
Just drink some milk, I guess.
Well, I talked to, now a little sneak preview, I talked to Louis Riddick about Shough for a column. It should be posted by posted Thursday for sure. But Louis has been the biggest, champion of Tyler Shough through it all. And he covered him a lot at ESPN, his games at Louisville. And I didn't know this, but he was a teammate of Jeff Brahms in the XFL, so they were friends. So he got a lot of insight into him from Brahm. And one of the things he brought up that I thought was interesting, he said, look, when did the Saints sign Drew Brees in free agency? He goes, he was probably about 25 years old, right? And he goes, he came off a shoulder injury. I'm sure there were a lot of skeptics then about, like, why are we getting this guy? No one else wanted him really but Miami. You know, he's damaged goods. Everybody would have been after him. He said a lot of the same questions about Drew Brees, I'm sure, were being raised then. And he goes, no one thinks about that now. You know, he's not saying he's going to be Drew Brees, but his point is the age and the injury things he thinks will go away as soon as they start winning games with him if he does make that transition. I thought that was a good point.
Where does Spencer Rattler fit into all of this, Rod? I mean, is it Mickey said, Kellen said, a quarterback competition? You feel it's a true going into minicamp, going into training camp, we're going to have our first true QB1 competition at Saints camp in a long time, or does Shough clearly have a leg up?
I mean, I think Shough is the guy that, just listening to Kellen Moore talk about him, I think that's the guy that he really likes. Now, I think they'll say it's a competition, and if Shough stinks it up, I mean, I think Spindler does have a chance, but I think it's Shuck's job to lose at this point.
I appreciate that you refrained from the Shough sucks it up rhyme that you had hanging right there.
Right there, yeah.
It sounded better, actually, the way you said it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on this, but don't discount that Kellen Moore has his guy. This is all every NFL coach. They want their guy. They want the one that they picked for the prom, and this is his pick. Now, I will say, Spencer Rattler, we talked about Shuck's experience. Well, Rattler has his experience playing in the NFL, but he played in 7 games, 6 starts. That's very valuable experience. We didn't really get to see what Rattler looked like with the full supporting cast. You know, maybe he goes out there and pushes Shough. Like, I could see this actually being competitive, or, you know, he plays with the chip on his shoulder. I don't think he's discounting himself by any means. I just think the structural advantages lean Shuck's way, but I would also say I think Shough is probably a better quarterback than Spencer Rattler is, at least. I mean, maybe I'm making that statement too early because I haven't watched them up close, but I like Shuck's tendency to not take sacks. That was the big thing on Rattler, is coming out of college, he took way too many sacks. Now, that offensive line was horrible at South Carolina, but that also continued into the pros, and so...
And not just sacks, but he fumbled a lot, too. He fumbled like 5 times in 7 games.
Yeah, I think like that, Kellen Moore is going to want a quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over, that makes smart and competitive plays, and that at least based on the scouting reports and what he showed at Louisville, that's Shough.
I think you make a great point, Rod. Also, like,
thanks, Jeff.
I mean, he wants his guy. I mean, that's why
they want him to win.
This is his guy. I mean, Louis Riddick said Kellen Moore's fingerprints are all over this pick. That's all you need to know. This is his guy. They don't pick him that high if he's not the guy. When they know they've got Spencer Rattler on the roster. And let's not discount Jake Haener. He's still in the hunt, still on the roster.
What about discount Ben?
You can discount Ben DiNucci. That's the news of the day. Ben DiNucci been released. It's interesting too that Rattler and Shough kind of grew up together. Like I think it's fascinating. It's a competition that they know each other very well.
Camp's going to be fun, man. It's going to be fun watching, and I guarantee you, Spencer Rattler is motivated by this. And you know, I think just get the sense. I got the sense they might have been competitive way back in youth league ball against each other.
They are probably used to fighting for the same a spot on the same team. Maybe not exactly on the same team, but who could get on the better team, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating. It's a great, subplot to the whole thing. But we haven't seen this. We haven't seen this, man.
They also have the same birthday, September 28th.
Isn't that fascinating? They're 1 year apart.
I think it's the thing that blows my mind, though, is I just finished like a freelance project. I always do these season preview stories for Lindy's and Athlon, and I can't remember ever we're almost in May, putting together, and there's so many questions. I can't even really answer. I have no idea who the quarterback really is going to be. We don't know really even for sure what defense they're going to run. There's so much questions that are unanswered right now. as we go into the season. I can't ever remember it being this uncertain, but it's also going to be kind of fascinating to see it once it starts playing on the field.
All right, let's take a break. This was supposed to be kind of a draft recap, but I mean, I think it was bound to turn into this discussion. But we will talk a little bit about the Saints draft, picks we liked, picks we didn't like as much when we come back right after this.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. With quick picks, you can tap right into pre-built, ready-to-bet parlays right from the home screen. And if you miss tip-off, no worries. You can play same-game parlays live during the action. Plus, it's never been easier to find and bet on the biggest matchups of the day, so you can keep up with all the action. Caesars Sportsbook, proud partner of the NBA and the only sportsbook app with Caesars Rewards. Download it today.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider Podcast. Encourage you to subscribe to the Saints Insider YouTube channel. We gained, 50-some subscribers on the live nights of the draft, which is great. So if you are new, welcome back. Hit the like button. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think of the Saints draft. We want to know your favorite pick and your least favorite pick. The Saints had 9. I think this is like an underrated storyline. Mickey Loomis didn't make a trade on draft night. Has that ever happened? Yeah, it's like a cause for celebration. No trade backs, of course, but no trade ups either. He made all 9 picks right where they were supposed to make them. The first round pick was Kelvin Banks. We need to talk about him. We haven't. I found it interesting that they went that direction, Rod, when the hole they had on the line was at guard. Number 9 is a high pick to be filling a guard. But Kelvin Banks obviously played mostly tackle in college at Texas, which leads you to believe that they think they have their 5 starters, but how they arrange them is the question they still have to figure out.
Yeah, that's going to be the big question. I mean, maybe they move Trevor, back to guard. But I do think they do have 5 guys they really like now. And, it's kind of, they picked, 3 tackles in the last 4 drafts when you go back to Trevor Penning. So that's not ideal. I mean, you want to just hit on them and be able to move on, but they weren't really able to do that. But I like the pick, and I mean, he won the Lombardi Trophy, the Outland Trophy. I mean, so he's obviously played against really good competition in the SEC, and so I mean, I like the pick. I think he's going to be a guy that can help them, and the line should be taken care of now. You hope.
Hey, he seems a lot like Fuaga last year, Jeff. Like you plug him in, and he's if things work out, he's your starter at tackle for the next 6 to 8 years, and that's easy to say, but that's such a valuable thing. It's interesting. He played mostly left tackle, where Fuaga played mostly right tackle in college. That leaves Penning as a possibility to move to guard, but Banks also, all the scouting reports said this is a guy who could move inside very easily too because of his size and his strength. So how do you see this kind of shaping up?
It's similar to me. They took Andres Pete, 13th, I think, overall. He was a tackle at Stanford, and he played guard his whole career. So I don't think it's out of the question he plays guard at all. Matter of fact, if you look in the Beast, which is probably the best draft preview, he's in the guards is where he's graded. So matter of fact, one person before the draft even said, if you have a good left tackle, you could plug this guy in at left guard, and it'd be very special. And that's kind of where the Saints are at. So I actually think that's where he's going to start his career, just because I think it'll be easier for one position instead of moving a bunch of guys around. That's how NFL coaches think. But this is a new staff, so there is that uncertainty there. But it seems easier to plug him in at left guard, see if Penning progresses under this new staff and a new system. And if he doesn't, you're not locked into him contractually. He moves on, then you can make your bookend tackles down the road. That's how I see it playing out, but who knows? Again, there's so much uncertainty, we'll see. But the thing is, he's flexible enough to do both. Played left tackle his whole career, and Fuaga played right tackle. So I think they're in a great spot on their offensive line now. They've got, if they put those 5 guys out there, they'll have 4 first-round picks and 1 second-rounder.
You could almost say the offensive line might be the strength of this team now. Almost.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, just with the number of picks that they've invested in it. This is the 11th straight year, I want to say, that they've taken either an offensive or defensive lineman in the first round, or with their first pick. McCoy was a second-round pick, but obviously they have invested in the trenches. Matt, are you leaning one way or the other on the guard, tackle, Penning, Banks situation?
I think they'll try him at tackle first, and then if it doesn't work throughout camp, they'll move him to guard. I need to see I think we're kind of all brushing we'll just have Penning play guard and see. I don't know. That seems like maybe a big ask for someone like that. Just given his, he finally found his footing at right tackle. They signed Dylan Radins, another guard who has experience starting. Fuaga was also considered to be a guard in some draft guides. I'd be really surprised if they tried him there, but that's theoretically another option. The Banks pick, though, has really grown on me, and maybe it's just talking to people involved, but I had a chance to talk with Kyle Flood, their offensive coordinator, who also serves as their offensive line coach, and he said that, Banks is really a cornerstone type of piece for a team, and that he called him a no-flaw kid. It took him 2 days to realize that, this is our left tackle. He arrived to campus later that summer compared to most high school recruits. And so, I like the pick, and I think they can't go wrong with it right now, no matter where he plays. If it is at guard, that'd be great. I think they're going to try him at tackle, but that's just more of the positional value because you do take him at 9. You want that to be a premium position, like hit the bell. But Brandon Sheriff was a great guard for Washington. They picked him 5th overall in 2015. But that summer, they tried him at right tackle, and he was terrible at right tackle, so they moved him to guard. But they at least tried him there first. So I think they're going to at least try Banks at tackle to see how he does. And if they have to move him to guard, they will.
It's really nice, I think, though, to have multiple guys with that versatility that you can, because there are injuries. Injuries happen on the offensive line every single year, and every year you look up and go, oh, God, what are they going to do now? But now you have some answers where you have Dylan Radins as sort of a backup interior lineman. I don't know if they'll sign somebody else, but they still have Nick Saldivari roaming around too. Like they have some depth.
Can we get some Will Clapp love on here?
Some Will Clapp, sure.
Landon Young.
It does seem like they have more depth on the interior. Landon Young is really the only swing tackle they have, right? But now you have 3 guys who have played it extensively before in Penning, Banks, and Fuaga. So I really like the offensive line. I think I never thought of it that way, Rod, but it's a great point to say, like, maybe this is the strength of the team. Teams that are always better than you think they are, it's always because of the line play. Like, I don't know. It was also a safe pick, guys, and probably a pick that a team makes when it's realizing it's going to have to build over a couple of years to something.
Yeah, and that's why I like Jalen Walker so much for them during the draft process, because he was the type of leader that I thought could really set the tone for the Kellen Moore era. And Banks seems like maybe he can be this type of player. Now, Banks is not the everyone follow me, guys, I've got this sort of player. Like, he's more lead by example, but he has a fun personality. You can kind of just tell talking to him, he knows how to show younger players. Like, and this offensive line particularly, you have Eric McCoy, who's a great leader. Like, he doesn't have to come in and be that type of player right away, but as the Saints now transition to this next era, I think he can kind of be that cornerstone piece for them.
Yeah, he's a foundational guy, which is what Loomis said they wanted. He made perfect sense, and that's why I think we had him so high on our picks, right? Didn't we all have him?
I think you were the only one of us who actually had him there.
I thought when you all did
Rod, you had what? He was the highest pick of Saints media at large, but as far as the 4 of us sitting up on the stage, he was second highest. Okay, who was
Tyler Warren was first.
Tyler Warren.
Yeah.
And look, if they didn't get him, which could have happened if there wasn't that trade, they might have gone to Tyler Warren, or they might have gone to Jalen Walker. It wasn't set in stone. Right. They said they had 2 or 3 guys that they really liked.
Yeah, Banks thought he was maybe going to go to the Raiders at 6.
Right.
So,
but I think when you look at what Kellen Moore had at Philadelphia, with how good his line was, I think he really values that, and that's the direction they went in because of. I mean, we know how good the Eagles line was, and that's kind of what made that offense go. And I think Kellen Moore was like, "Look, we can try to do the same thing here."
Yeah, he wants. That's how he wants to build. I think it's smart. So you have that as the first round pick, which was safe, but I think we all kind of give it the thumbs up. Like this was not clearly not a bad thing to do. And then Shough is such a wild card in the second round. Who could obviously make or break this draft. So going further down the board, and you can include Banks and Shough if you want to, but who is your favorite pick that the Saints made out of the 9? If you want to throw out 2 names, you can. I
think I'm going to do 2. But I'm going to start. You won't like this one, but I'm going to Devin Neal, the running back from Kansas. I just think he might be
Yes.
I actually like the pick, too. I think
he might be a good pick.
And
we know the issues they've had with Kendre Miller being injured, so now they got another guy who's durable at Kansas and all-time leading rusher. And I think he's a guy that can maybe step in and put some pressure on Kendre Miller if he's still around. I think he'd be a good pick for this team. He can do a lot of things. So
he's kind of everything Kendre Miller is not.
Right.
He's, durable,
more of the workhorse,
productive for over a number of years. He kind of actually is kind of like an Alvin Kamara type.
Probably doesn't pop on film as much as Kendre did, but that might be a good I mean, it's not a good thing, but you'll take the other stuff if you have to give that up. I have a guy in mind, but I'm going to let you. Do you have a second guy?
I'll let them go first.
Okay.
If they don't mention them, I'll just bring them back up.
Go ahead, Matt.
I have 2 as well. I'll go first with Jonas Senker from Virginia, the safety.
Is it Jonas?
It is
Okay.
Jonas.
All right.
Yeah,
That makes me like him better.
It's the second Jonas we've had in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Senker Tunis. No, hard-hitting safety. Another guy who might be better suited for the box, which I think Justin Reed and Tyrann Mathieu are both better suited for the box. So I don't know necessarily the fit there, but Tyrann Mathieu, obviously older, maybe declined a bit last year. Senker is long, rangy. I do think you could play him on the back end, even if he's better suited for the box. And they kind of had it wasn't a huge need for them, but I just think it makes sense given he was a 3-year starter at Virginia, hard hitter. I just like the player.
I'm going
This was my guy. Go ahead.
Quincy Riley. Yeah.
I like Quincy Riley.
Now Quincy Riley was really good at Louisville. He didn't have as good a year this past year, but he was a guy that was a shutdown corner for them, and I think he's going to get on the field early because I think there's a need. But it goes back to what we're talking about, the offensive line. I think they're going to have to try some guys out, see who fits at nickel, who fits in the slot. I think they call that position the star position in Staley's defense. They've got a bunch of guys, but I think he's got a chance to play early, and they needed. We talked about. You could argue that was the biggest need they had on defense was corner.
Well, that's why I was a little bit like the Senker pick was fine, and we'll talk about our least favorite picks. After 3 rounds on Friday night, I'm sitting here going, how have they not taken a corner yet? But Riley was a guy I thought maybe they needed to take in the 3rd round because I didn't think he would still be there Saturday. And so the fact that they got him Saturday made up for maybe a couple of off the board picks in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. Rod, did they?
No,
say
I was going to say the linebacker from Oklahoma just because I think.
Yeah,
Stutzman. Yeah,
I was going to say the 7th rounder from Syracuse, Diggs.
It might be a good thing that we all kind of picked out a different guy as being a
well, you know what?
A positive pick.
It's very clear a lot of these picks is they hit on really almost every position except receivers, Rod pointed out. But it's pretty clear each guy is viewed, okay, this guy down the road will be the replacement for Demario Davis, the replacement for Tyrann Mathieu, the replacement for Alvin Kamara maybe. I mean, like you can see the thought process behind it.
Which the Saints needed that. Like, I mean, my God, we've been asking for that for years. Like this team's getting older. They need to go get some younger blood in, and so maybe they did it in this draft. Stutzman, in particular, just seems like an animal. I mean,
yeah, and I mean,
an animal.
We keep talking about these guys getting
Brings the
older, but
juice.
DeMario's getting older. Pete Werner's kind of been dealing with injuries, and outside of that, Willie Gay's no longer here. So I mean, they needed some depth at linebacker, and so I think
Can we just repeat his Instagram post where he called himself Communion because he's the cracker with the juice? Since we're talking about church, you hadn't heard that, Norman? Norman's laughing. He called himself, his nickname is Communion because he's the cracker with the juice.
That's awesome. Might be the best
How
nickname
can
of
you
all
not
time.
like this guy coming in? I mean, come on. Diggs, 7th round. I mean, he was rated much higher than that in the Beast and a lot of other.
Yeah, he's a
rankings, so-
4th rounder, 4th to 5th rounder grade from Dane Brugler, whose opinion I respect. Productive, 7.5 sacks. That would have tied the lead for the Saints last year here at Syracuse.
About halfway to 15. maybe.
yeah, exactly. Was also productive at Texas A&M before this, I think. Was it Texas A&M or Florida?
A&M.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just needed an edge rusher, and that was kind of the. It was funny that I was talking with Luke, and I was like, "Man, I can't believe these guys haven't taken a tight end or an edge rusher yet." And then the last two picks
came along, and they took care of it.
Yeah.
Okay, least favorite picks. Who wants to go first?
I didn't understand the Broughton pick.
Was that yours too, Matt?
Yeah.
It's just
It
in
felt
particular
like a reach.
Well, yeah, for him in particular, obviously they know the kid because of connections at Texas, but just looking at every draft board, I mean, like, he was pretty far down. I mean, way down where they took him. There were a number of other defensive tackles, so they obviously really had some reason or insight on this kid that made them pull the trigger.
Is he the one whose Wi-Fi wasn't working very well on his own?
He plays hard as expletive. Was his press conference.
But he would probably be my obvious pick. But to me, the fact that they did not pick a receiver would be the thing that I was probably the most disappointed in. I just thought that was just such a big need, and they didn't feel it. Mickey talked about how they, it was a position to go into the draft. They wanted one, but the board just never quite fell right. So they were like, just missing these guys, and I almost wish they would have just said, okay, let's just go up and get one if you really want one.
Yeah,
maybe there wasn't anybody there
a couple got taken right before they picked Shough. Luther Burden got taken the pick before, and then the kid from Iowa State. I'm blanking on his name.
Higgins.
But he got taken like 5 picks before.
And McMillan got picked right before.
And
I don't know.
McMillan in the first round. So you could make the argument that, like, hey, Shough might have lasted to pick 71 the way people were waiting on quarterbacks. Should you have taken a wide receiver at 40 and wait? But if the wide receivers they liked were gone, and then at 71 it didn't seem like there was an obvious one. But I'm with you guys. Even if Broughton works out, it's just really not a good value if you could have gotten the guy. You had another pick 22 picks later when they took Sanker. I don't know. I mean, it's just so hard to tell the intel these guys have. If they knew somebody else was interested in him and they thought, we have to grab him now. But just looking at it from the outside, you think, you could have gotten him in the later in the third or maybe even the fourth round. Why did you use such a high pick on him?
It felt like every other pick was a value pick where they were taking them just whoever fell to them.
I thought day 3 they did really well with value.
Right, but it felt like this was one that they kind of really reached on.
Well, this is where I think the impact of the new coaching staff comes in, is because he played for Bo Davis in college. I think that's maybe where, like, your assistants pound the table and was like, all right, let's do these guys a favor. And, we'll see if that works out. The reason I don't like it is not necessarily because of the overreach of where this guy was ranked. That stuff we've seen all the time. That doesn't matter nearly as much. Where I don't get it is because they traded for Devon Godshaw. And
well, he's pretty old. So
he's old, but, like, I guess just, like, where does that position, how the Saints have handled that position has just been kind of perplexing to me. And I don't think if Mason Graham was still available at 9 when the Saints have picked, I wouldn't have cared about the Godshaw trade. But using a third rounder on Broughton, but they traded for Godshaw, drafted Broughton. They decided to bring back both starters in Saunders and Shepard.
I thought that was weird from the beginning.
They have John Ridgeway. They drafted Christian Boyd a year ago.
Brian Brzee.
Brian Brzee is probably the best of that bunch. It's just a very crowded position that, I think Gotchaw's going to help with their run defense. I could see Broughton helping with their run defense. I don't know. Like, we talked about, haven't they taken a corner to the 4th round? Like, that 3rd round was the range right there where I think the Eastern Kentucky kid went right after, a few picks after. Alzare Thomas from Florida State went right after.
Ravel from East Carolina. Yeah.
East Carolina, sorry. Went right after the Saints pick.
Now, having said that, I remember looking at the board because we were out live and looking at who was available and saying, they might need a corner. And I listed the top 5 or 6 names on the best available, and of course that's subjective. But Quincy Riley was one of the names.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And they ended up getting him anyway. So you could say it all kind of worked out.
I think also, I think we look at this draft. I think it's a fairly good draft. We'll see how it plays out, but across the nation, nationally, it's pretty graded pretty lowly, and I think a lot of it has to do with some of the things we're talking about, where they took some of these guys, Shough, Broughton. It just feels like nationally they don't view this nearly as well as they do here.
I also just don't think none of these picks are like one super sexy like NFL draft darling, like oh my god this guy, and then also like the Sanker pick, for instance. As much as I like it, he's not going to come in right away and play. Like he's not a type of pick that's like, oh my god, that guy's an instant starter for them. And so I think draft grades in general get like propped up when you say, like, you look at the Patriots draft, like, oh man, like now they have a starting running back that they got in the second round, that so on and so forth. Like I think when you look at like this guy made their team better right away, I think inflates the grade. Whereas with the Saints picks, I think it adds solid depth and stuff, but I don't know how many of those guys will be starters or contributors right away.
You know what's interesting? You say that, and I'm going to throw this to Rod for obvious reasons. How much differently would this draft be looked at nationally if the Saints take Shedeur Sanders instead of Tyler Shough? He's the big name that Matt's talking about.
Yeah, perception-wise, I think people, Shedeur was the big name. They talked about him more than they talked about Cam Ward, who was picked number 1 overall. So it definitely would have changed the outlook. I don't know if it actually changes how much better this team is.
Exactly, yeah. So, that's the thing is, like, maybe they come out better, and this is why draft grades are so silly, and we're not going to do a podcast with a draft grade or something because you got to wait 2 or 3 years. Like, now's the time we should be grading the 2022 and 2023 drafts and saying, well, they didn't do very well. They didn't do very well with the Isaiah Foskey pick, and even that might be a little early to say. It's still possible. He getting less and less likely, but it's still possible that he turns out to be a player. So you can't sit here and say, oh, the Saints get a C or a B- or a D or how do you know?
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing grades in the moment. I would just say that there's some context about it. I mean, maybe I should have asked Mickey Loomis what he thought of his 2022 draft. Hey, Mickey, it's been 3 years. Can you give us a full evaluation of how that draft
went? It takes 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
What do you think now? Yeah.
But Shough will,
It'll make
his
or break.
career is going to be based on, people are going to always compare him to Shedeur because so many people here wanted him. They're going to always check the box scores on Sunday, see how Shedeur did. And that's just something he's going to have to live with. But I do think it's a good pick, and I think Saints may have ended up coming out better than people realize.
Obviously, the league was way further down on Shedeur than the media was. There's no doubt about that. Proof's in the pudding. But you're right. Like, and in some ways, Jeff, I think you were saying Shough may make or break this draft class.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about it. It's going to be all on him. And I can't remember there being this kind of interest level in a pick. And we saw it the night of the draft on the podcast, the live podcast. There was a lot of people in there wanting to hear about the draft. There's more interest now because in the quarterback business, and the team hasn't been in it. Even using a number 40 pick overall in the second round, it was still higher than they've ever used a pick since Archie Manning. That's insanity. You really think about it. They've always gone the veteran route for their quarterbacks. So I think this shapes up to be a very interesting offseason, even if the expectations for the team are very low, at least externally. It's going to be a fascinating camp because of all this newness in the coaching staff, the scheme, and the roster.
Okay, so that'll do it for our show today. We'll be back on Friday, and we'll kind of reset the offseason a little bit more as far as moving it forward and what the Saints still need to do. They still have a little bit of cap space, still need a receiver, but so do some other teams. So I think they may have some competition for that spot. But we'll talk about that and a few other things as we get past the draft into, I guess, the minicamp part of the offseason. And the schedule release coming in 2 weeks from today, too. So lots to talk about here on the Saints Insider. We thank you for watching. Hit the like button. Our producer today was Norman Bell. He's Rod Walker, Matthew Paris, and Jeff Duncan. I'm Zach Ewing, and we will see you next time on the Saints Insider.